More. Dear Apple, I think you should. This is Mac Voices. This edition of Mac Voices is supported by MacVoices Magazine, our free Flipboard magazine that brings you the best Apple tech tips on the web. High in signal, low in noise, just like Mac Voices, MacVoices Magazine will help you do more with any and all of your Apple devices. Access MacVoices Magazine content in the free Flipboard app, on the web, and now in your favorite RSS reader. Find out more at macvoices.com/magazine. Welcome to Mac Voices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. This is part 2 in a 3-part Mac Voices live conversation with the panel, and the topic was, Dear Apple, I think you should. We wanted to give the panel members a chance to say what they think they would like to see Apple do, and there were no other parameters, so the ideas ranged from the 30,000-foot level right down to individual interests. And each one is really intriguing and generates lots of conversation and sometimes disagreement among the panel members. So let's go right back to it. David, if you could tell Tim Cook or the board what you think they should do, where would you take us?
Well, I think the rumors just came out the other day that kind of stole my thunder. I was hoping something that was going to come of the HomePod after they discontinued it, and rumor has it they're saying that there's going to be maybe a display with a built-in device that's going to be able to play media similar to what Amazon and others are doing. And I think it's the type of item I'd be kind of excited about, only because I'd like to consume the content in a small little device and have it in a room. I have a Google Home sitting here next to me, and I use that a fair amount just because it's a small little device. I would tell them I was going to tell them until it was released the other day. I'd like to see that expand. Of course, it's a rumor, so it may not necessarily come true, but I think. I like that, and expanding upon Apple TV, and I can hit it with the Apple TV Plus. I think they're really spending a lot of money on content with Apple TV Plus, but if the Apple TV is combined with that device I just described, I think it'd be something they'll really do well with in media. I really do.
So could that fit in at all with the AR VR? I mean, does AR have to put information in front of us, or could it put information in front of us on a screen in a more effective fashion?
I guess it could put it on the screen itself, or if they were to combine it with something with AR, if it was like the Oculus glasses type of device that really gave you a really immersed experience watching a lot of the shows and things you want to watch. I think that's a possibility as well. And I know AR is really going to be taking off. I mean, Apple obviously is doing a lot more with it, and I would think that I think it would be a really good thing. So yeah, I really want to be able to be more immersed with small devices like this. I think it's something I would ask.
Interesting way to take it. I don't know if I told this story on this show or someone else's. So if I told it here, forgive me. But the other night I was laying in bed watching TV, and a historical figure was mentioned that I was not completely familiar with. Now, we're not going to get into who and why and all that, but I accidentally, because I intended to ask the other device, I asked the S lady, who was so and so. And I expected, you can see something on your iPhone. To my shock, she popped up and told me all about it.
I thought about mentioning that when Jeff was here, because that has been a thing that has delighted me so much lately. When I say that, and it doesn't shoot the thing, just exactly what you're talking about happened like a week ago, where all of a sudden it's like, yeah, here's a paragraph, want another one? It's like, no, that was actually more than I expected, so we're good.
Yeah, and I now, to be fair, I turned around and asked the A lady the same question, and I got pretty much the same thing. But the idea that Siri is not progressing is inaccurate. Siri is definitely progressing. Things are happening, and if Apple were to pair that with a screen of some kind in some fashion, and I don't know what I'm talking about, but that would start to border on AR of a different flavor, at least for me.
Mm-hmm.
So, let's see, who haven't we heard from? Frank, with your years of experience, what do you think Apple should do?
Well, first of all, give me a big blank check. I want that. But I was thinking the other day, this sort of ties in with what David was thinking. When the HomePod Mini went down, now I live in a studio apartment on the third floor, so you only can make so much noise, even though this place is fairly soundproof. And I got to thinking, since you can do like the stereo thing with the Mac Minis, and I think they're going to be putting spatial audio into that as well now. What I was thinking is if they made a bundle, bring back the HomePod, re-engineer it so that instead of shooting like tweeters and woofers out the side, figure out some way to make like a, not deep, but a mild bass sound coming out. Make that your subwoofer, sell it with 2 HomePod Minis with spatial audio, sell it as a bundle as a small surround sound system. Now, for my apartment, it'd be great because, like I said, I'm on the third floor. I couldn't have like a 8-inch subwoofer firing down the floor. They'd have to come up with some kind of new engineering. They've been really rocking it with computational audio. But if they could come up with something like that, repurposing something that they had, and we know they have the technologies for, because we've discussed before about how HomePod actually was really sort of set for the Sonos demographic with the technology it had. But I think if they could just put those 3 things together, sort of repurposing, and they've got all the machinery up for the other stuff, figure out the basic, and just come out with that little home theater. If they could sell that to me for $650, I mean, tons of people would be able to use it in their apartments, their bedrooms, and stuff like that, and not bother people, but still sort of get a much richer experience. I mean, I use the AirPod Pros. It's all well and fine, but the bottom end isn't quite there. The spatial audio is there, but I would like to have a little more. I mean, it wouldn't be like, window rattling bass, but something that was more fuller to give a more dynamic range of the whole experience for when I'm watching like Apple TV or a movie. Or even some music. I mean, I listen to music all the time through my audio engine speakers, and I love that. But if I could have more bass on the bottom, I'd be a happy pup.
Well, a thing that got mentioned when we talked about this over at Daily Observations, we said one of the things that ended up coming out of that was Dave Hamilton saying that it was going to be a sound bar. They were going to take the computational audio and turn it into a sound bar. And he sort of tossed it off at the end of the show, but it was the thing that I ended up stuck in my brain. Like, that's totally a thing they could do, because the computational audio is the part that makes that magical if you're going to get a sound bar for your TV. Now, if you want to riff on that and be like, yeah, by the way, they managed to wedge an Apple TV along the back of that sound bar. So now you have the whole thing in one unit that you were going to put on your TV anyway. And now, all of that works for you. That's a different thing. But I definitely that would be a way that you could update the Apple TV in a manner that would make it interesting. I don't think that's what's going to happen. I know what I think is going to happen, and I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. So I think we're stuck with that, the box that we have for the foreseeable future. But I think there's something to that, because Apple isn't spending all this time to learn about computational audio and all of the things that they can do with computational audio and spatial audio for fun. Like, it's headed somewhere. Where that is, we haven't seen it yet, but they're headed somewhere with it.
Okay. Frank, I agree with you. I hear what Kelly's saying, and the question I would ask both of you, it's rhetorical, I don't expect answers, but because I think that, Frank, your idea, I think, has a lot more market appeal, a broader market appeal. Kelly, I'm not sure if yours does, but I'd have to see the specs, obviously, on a product that doesn't exist, so I have no idea. But the idea that because I think that's something we all have to pass the lens we have to pass it through is, can this be a moneymaker? Can it be enough of a broad stroke product as opposed to a niche product?
Mm-hmm. Well, lots of people buy a soundbar, which I think is where Dave was coming from with that. Like, lots of folks aren't necessarily super happy with the sound that comes out of the TV,
of course,
and are using something else to augment that in some particular way. So I think that's where that stuck with me, because lots of people buy soundbars, and so I could see that having a certain amount of appeal because that's a product a lot of people want. So,
yeah. Okay. Thank you, Frank. Interesting. Kelly, how about if we go to you? Yeah. What would you like to have Apple? What do you think Apple should do?
I think, and I want to get through the end of it because I'm trying to like nail down exactly what this kind of looks like. But I want Apple to remember that they are a consumer product company and that they make things for consumers. And who are consumers? They're not the people on this podcast. They're not the people listening to this podcast. Consumers are the people who call the people on this podcast and the people who listen to this podcast and say, my phone doesn't do the thing it's supposed to do. So, and the reason that I come to this is home automation, because all of the smart home automation stuff that we have now is hard, and it's not easy, and it can break in a mysterious way and never really be clear. And I'm just talking strictly about the things that I can lay at Apple's feet. I'm not talking about my Hue does this weird thing and that's all Apple's fault. Like, nothing like that at all. I'm talking about like when I set up HomeKit at my house, there are two people who live in my house, and one of the people who lives in my house is me. I know this. Sorry to be super technical. I hope everyone can keep up. I live here. And when I went to set up HomeKit, it said, hi, here's your house. Da, 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 da. And then it was, and then I was like, okay, well, I want someone, like, there's someone else who lives here. I would like that person to be able to turn on lights and change the thermostat and all those things. And it was like, okay, you have to invite them, and you will always be the person with ultimate access. And that person, who in my particular case happens to also be a grown, responsible adult who lives in the house and does all the same stuff, that person will never have as much access as you do because you set up the house. And I, to this day, cannot wrap my head around it. I will probably die mad about it. And I've made my peace with that because I can't understand how somebody who is not me or somebody who has my phone number is supposed to reasonably able to set this stuff up easily, have it work, and do the kinds of things that we talk about here. If it's sunlight, if it's daytime when I leave and nighttime when I come home, the light comes on automatically for me because it knows it's dark and you wanted the light to come on if it was dark when you got here. So turn the light on so that you never have to stumble into an empty house. Like, setting something like that up shouldn't be complicated, and having things be secure, which is what, the whole point of HomeKit, what HomeKit is for and what it's supposed to do. Making those things possible shouldn't be as complicated as it is. And the number of times I have talked to somebody who is generally a member of my family, who has said to me, this is the thing that I'm trying to do. And I'm like, okay, well, you have to go and you have to uncheck the box that is totally unrelated to the thing that you're trying to do, and then restart. And when you're done, once that checkbox is unchecked, all the stuff you want to do is going to totally work. But what does that checkbox have to do with? Well, it doesn't, but once you do that, things will work. Why is this so hard? And for a company that made their money on it just works, and a company that made their money on having an elegant experience and a beautiful user experience that made it nice to use technology, I feel like sometimes we lose sight of that. And I want everyone who works at Apple on a thing to take that thing and go give it to a member of their family who doesn't quite understand what it means that they work at Apple, and let that person try it for an hour and see what happens. Because you can be as jazzed about industrial design and functionality and things like spatial audio and computational photography, but if you hand it to your family member who says, where's the power button? Like, you've lost. And that's the part that I think sometimes Apple has started losing sight of. I think they're getting away from that a little bit, because I see a lot of stuff in Big Sur in particular that feels like it got all designed for design's sake so that it would be different from everything else, and not stopping to think about why those things were the way they were and making something work in a similar way so that you could actually do it. I could make a whole nother show about the stuff in Big Sur that makes me mad right now, so I'm going to stop. But and it's not because it's different. I don't mind change. I thought the pinstripes were fine. When the pinstripes left, I thought that was fine too. When everything went flat, when everything, got rounded corners, all of these, whatever, like, I wasn't mad about anything being different than it was before in another version of the operating system. I'm mad about the fact that things don't work on a fundamental level. And it's not like, oh, it's a bug and it's a thing that needs to be resolved. It's somebody made a decision here that feels user hostile to me. And I feel like I'm pretty confident in saying I am not a typical end user. And I spend literally all day long with all this stuff and still have people, like, why is it hard? Why is it like this? And like, I don't have a good answer for that. And I feel like that's a thing that Apple needs to get back to, is remember what it's like to delight people, to go back to Jeff's wish.
Okay, so I get what you're saying, and I'm not giving anybody a pass here. I still feel like the home automation thing is still pretty much early days.
Oh, it is. Absolutely.
I don't see the other platforms doing it necessarily any better. Sometimes the results seem to be a little better, but we've had the privacy discussion to death. That's Apple's thing, and I personally don't have as much. I don't have as much trouble as you do with the idea that as there has to be a master user. That just feels like there's a certain logic to that. Might not be a logic you agree with, or that it's the most convenient, but I feel like there's a logic to that.
I feel like there should be a way to make a second ultimate cosmic power user. Right now there's not. And so. That's my problem.
Brittany, you wanted to jump in on this.
Oh, actually, mine was just sort of related. In that Kelly and I both work with regular people and their technology. So I can wait for my actual real topic turn. It's okay.
Okay. Well, I mean, real people. Yeah, I agree. There are definitely some things.
Do you prefer muggles?
Should be.
I'm open to alternative suggestions for terminology.
Yeah. Well, I kind of like the real people. That sounds nicer. But yeah, I mean, you're right. It's not as easy as it should be. Then again, thinking back the way the development of the OS's, development of the iPhone, of all these things they didn't pop out fully formed. Let's put it that way. So,
right.
In the chat room, Paul made this suggestion that he would like to see Apple buy back Apple stock.
They do that on the regular anyway, don't they?
Buy Bitcoin, like Elon.
And they'll be down to $2,000 within a day.
Oh, Lord, I'll be over here.
Yeah. So I just thought, I love it when the chat room throws things in that just come right out of left field, because that's, I mean, nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. All right, Brittany, how about if we go to you, since you were waiting for your turn, and we'll just give it to you.
Okay.
Since it overlapped with Kelly's.
So this is a gong I've rung before. I'm sure there's plenty of things that Apple could do that would be awesome and surprise and make things, but they're making pretty good things. And I mostly kind of just want to see where the roller coaster is going to take us. But I have drums I hit all the time, and they usually have to do with cognitive science. So one of the things that makes me absolutely crazy is when there's an interface thing that could just as easily be the same on this device as it is on this device, and it's not the same. Which means that the button I use to, share a thing, sometimes it's in the upper right corner, and it'll be here on my iPad, and then I either move into split screen or just move over to my phone, and it's in a different place. The dictation button on my phone and my iPad are in different sides of the screen entirely. I just want the things to be in the same place if there's no good reason for it to not be in the same place. And I don't think that is too unreasonable, because I find my muscle memory going to the spot, and then that's not the spot, it's on the other spot. And so then I never really get into a flow. of things and muscle memory. It's really just, oh, where's the button? And I have to look for it every time, which is it's pointless cognitive work on these things that I spend all my time on. My biggest pet peeve for this is settings to preferences. They're not the same name, and which is fine for me. It's not fine for my Aunt Karen. Sorry, I know that's the stereotype. I actually am working with my Aunt Karen on her computer. She just bought a new M1 Mac.
Hello,
Like,
Aunt
no,
Karen.
there's an actual Aunt Karen, you guys. That's actually,
Yeah,
that's a real
I
thing.
could have
Yeah.
just easily said my boyfriend, who I also need to sit down. He just has less patience than my Aunt Karen, but about the same knowledge. That is not the same. And in Big Sur, they did one thing that makes you crazy. Mostly, I'm fine with Big Sur. I turn off transparency and things look fine. But the sound notifications are no longer in the notification center thing. So you have to go into the app, and then sometimes you can't find it. And if there's one thing I never, ever, ever want my computer to do, it's to make a notification sound for anything ever. And now I have to hunt it down in each app like a crazy person because it's not in the same place it is on my iPhone, but it was last version. I'm not arguing for parity of features or anything. I like having a separate device for the different things. I'm happy to pay the extra money for it and have them do those things, and that's great. I just don't know why the button can't be in the same place, or the numbers icon. It's not even the same color on my Mac as it is on the iPhone or on my iPad. And I don't know why that would be. Like, if you want them to be different, do what OmniFocus did and have it just be like inverse of black and purple. And it's fine. You can figure it out. And if they want to keep making the iPhone mini and just make it a tiny bit minier, that'd be awesome.
Okay. Ken, you're looking thoughtful. Are you
No.
absorbing all this, or
You want the iPhone mini to be smaller? All right.
There's one.
Far out. No,
The
I've
iPhone.
not heard anybody
The
say
6
that.
was way too big, and it's a little bit too close to the 6.
All
The
right.
iPhone Nano coming soon.
I just want it to be a little bit closer on that slider that takes it to the 5S than it is right now. And
You
then
would accidentally
perfect.
aspirate it.
Oh, not the 5. The 5S was wonderful. It fit all the way in my pants pocket.
And
To bring up another drum
I
that
haven't worn
Kelly
anything
beats
but
on the
yoga
regular.
pants in a year, so it's fine. I don't care about the pockets thing.
Yeah.
But
But it was one of the many advantages to the 5S was that when you wore actual pants, it would fit in the pocket of a women's pair of actual pants.
But what I care about is I cannot sit in front of a computer all day long without losing my mind. And most of that time gets eaten up on Zoom. And so when I go get work done, it's with a computer that's in my hand so I can walk around and not be glued anymore. And so having it just a tiny bit too big is problematic.
Okay.
So that was the one, not the interface stuff. It was the iPhone one.
That was the thing that stunned me. Yeah.
Well, the interface thing.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Ken. No, go ahead, Ken. Well,
no,
You guys duel it out. We'll
please,
watch.
you go ahead.
All right, I'll make it quick. The interface thing, I agree. It would be nice. I kind of understand how it happens because different iterations of the OSs get done. There are different teams. Could it be made? Should there be a czar over it? Yeah, maybe. I give them a lot more of a pass on some of that.
When it goes, I think it's in like their actual style guide because I'm on the iPad, right? And I go into split mode and now it looks like an iPhone app. And like the same app has just changed where the buttons are. And these are native apps too, not just third-party apps.
Yeah.
Like it just moved.
Ken, go ahead. I'm sorry. It is, the floor is yours, sir.
No, it's not I got nothing. It's not. I mean, I'm hearing what Brittany's saying, and I understand why it would be annoying. And there are a couple of things. There's one thing in particular. I think it's on Mail or something that it looks like you should be able to type there, but it's actually not a field for typing. But mostly, it's just I learn the way things are, and then updates are wasted on me. Like if they say, hey, we have this new way you can do it, I'm like, well, that's great, except the way I've been doing it for however many years is fine. So I'm going to keep doing that way. When they mess it up or when they change it, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say mess it up. When they change it, it takes me a couple of weeks to get used to it, but then I get used to it again. I'm like, it's like when you move the couch on a dog, and the first week the dog's like, and then after a while, I was like, oh yeah, I'm just going to go lay down over here.
Exactly. Except it happens to me every hour because I was doing it this way on my phone and now it's this way on the iPad.
But you have moved from one device to another. I mean, there is the whole like learning. I mean, and I'm not saying you're doing it wrong. I'm just saying I think I turn into quickly a creature of habit. The thing that I have, it's like, okay, now I know how to do this on this thing. And if I go over to something else, unless it's the first time I've moved over there, then that would be infuriating. But then after, a couple of weeks, it's just, but you're right. You want to change.
There's just a slow little
get them on the
cognitive
phone.
drain of like, oh, right, I'm on my iPad now. And it's like, or I could have already finished the thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I'm always looking to make that more efficient. So that's
and I've said this, I don't know how many times, Brittany, I think you come at it from a completely different angle than any of the rest of us because of your attention to cognitive detail.
Because science.
Yes, well, that's okay. And I respect it. I think it's interesting because you have pointed out more than one thing that I never even thought about before because I'm a little more like Ken. It's like, yeah, well, that's the way it is. So that's the way I got to do it. And I got stuff to get done. So I'm not going to stress over it. I'm just going to learn it and do it and move on. But you point out that things that's apparently stressful to me. And I didn't even know it was stressful until you pointed it out. So thank you, I think.
And now it's stressful.
Now you're not stressful on it.
A lot of stress.
There's stress on it.
So thank you.
It's like a slipped gear every time. And I think part of what makes it so jarring is the teaming up and the continuity and handoff and airdrop and all of the things that make it seamless to have a bunch of Apple devices, like make it so obvious when things don't work the same or don't work in concert with each other. Because I have the thing where I can go to Safari and I can go, here, put that on my iPhone, put that on my iPad, put that on the TV, for Pete's sake. I can do all that kind of stuff because I have all of these devices that all work together. And so when they don't, or on one, it goes like this, and on the other one, it goes like that, and it's very jarring. Part of it is because the rest of the time, there's such a smooth experience that these things just stand out more.
Yeah. Apple used to be more careful about that kind of thing too. And, they used to do user interface research and stuff like that. And that all seems to have gone out the board around the time of iOS 7.
Still do.
But
you're also
I think around the time of iOS 7 and
all over. But they still do. But there's more stuff now. And
yes.
And then there's more things to pay attention to. And I totally get that. This is not a blame thing. It's a, hey, if Chuck, he gave us this mental image of him sending this off to Tim Cook, and what are some of the things that I wanted to get out, and that was up there. It's not because I don't appreciate it. It's a difficult problem. I mean, they have interface guidelines for, hey, I'm in a country that doesn't read top right, left to right, top to bottom, and they have those, and that's. Mm-hmm. It's not that they're not putting thought into it. I don't want to suggest that at all. It's just one of those places I've noticed that there's a lot of hiccups that could maybe use a little tweaking.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's move on. And Jay, I want to make sure you get in because you weren't sure you were going to be here, and so I want to you had given us something to read, and I'm not going to read it because you're here. So I don't know if you're going to stick with that one or not.
I'm going to stick with that, but I found a better way to word it, I guess. So I wish Apple would let its employees focus outside of Apple, at least from time to time. And I mean this from a pretty much technological standpoint. I'm going to throw some names out. GPT-3. Elon Musk, OpenAI, now Microsoft. TensorFlow, Google. NPM, something that every Node.js, every JavaScript developer has grown to hate and just hate. There's no love there. GitHub, owned by Microsoft. React, the React framework, another JavaScript language that powers a lot of iOS apps and other applications and web applications, and React Native and React Router and all that. Facebook. Last one, the Unreal Engine. Oh, that's scary. Because that's competitorness right there. That's a 15 to 30% warfare that we're waging.
Or the Unity engine also.
30 to 0 if you want to get both sides of the story.
But at the end of the day, there are companies that are doing things that say, you know what, let's do this. It's free. It allows people to build. It allows people to make companies. It allows people to make products. And Apple says, yeah, we do that. But it has to be in the App Store, or it has to be on a Mac, or it has to use Swift. I'm sorry. I want Apple, a company that takes inclusivity to heart. I mean, not looking at their executive page, but that's a whole nother story. But looking at a company that thinks long and hard about what are the impacts that this is going to have on accessibility, except for when they mess up Brittany's buttons. And a company that wants to say, you know what, we do want to do better. I want them to do that, but I don't want people to feel like if I go work at Apple to build a better world, I have to shut down my podcast. I have to shut down my YouTube channel. I have to stop writing my blog. I can't say anything that's potentially like viewed as, oh, Apple employee thinks that Apple could have made a better decision on a thing. And I'm sorry, the world, especially the developer world, just doesn't work like that. Everyone here has said something negative about Apple, at least in the last hour. If Apple ever reached out to us, the first thing they might ask us is, hey, that MacVoices live conversation you had, what's up with that? And I think that I don't want to work for a company that won't let me focus on the things that are important to me, like diversity, something that's important to them, that won't let me focus on things that I love doing, like making stupid videos about automation and tech and podcasting, something that they invest in with their shortcuts program. And I'm like shooting myself in the foot by wanting to invest in myself in a future career, knowing that if I make it to the top, all of that stuff has to go away. And to me, that I'm not cool with that. So I wish Apple would just let its employees do things, whether it helps Apple enjoy life or, you know, it helps someone out there who's on a Windows machine say, hey, this is kind of a cool thing too. I wonder what company is behind this. Oh, wait, Apple is.
There is one sort of exception, and I think this is a great point, Jay. I saw that you brought this up earlier, and I was like, that's awesome. The one exception is sort of you mentioned, which is the Swift team. That is kind of run like some of those other projects. It's open source. It's hosted on GitHub. And the Swift team is not so isolated from the rest of the world. But yeah, I've seen that over and over again. Somebody gets hired by Apple and they just disappear. And it's got to limit Apple's access to some of the top people in the industry. Because, you know, yeah, who wants to disappear? Brittany, go ahead.
A pretty simple segue. Shout out to an episode that Chuck had me on. It doesn't hinder the talent because at the end of the day, we'll almost all just sell out for Apple. Like that paycheck and that retirement check, like that stock value alone. They're like, hey, shut everything down. I'm like, you got it, boss. When do those stock assets valuate? Because I'm never working again after that. But again, what does that do? That takes brilliant minds out of the ecosystem and it puts them focused on Apple-centric things, not ecosystem-centric things or developer-centric things or podcaster-centric things.
And I think part of the thing I don't know is what if you are an Apple employee, you know, I'm sure it depends on the team and things like that, like what you are and are not allowed to talk about and all of that. And that's fine. But I think that there are some people who sort of look at that and decide that rather than commenting even in broad strokes on technology and saying something like, being able to go out and comment on, Swift has in fact evolved since it was originally released. Something like that that's pretty non-controversial still sounds like something that could be fraught depending on, what the guidelines look like when you're doing stuff at Apple. And so I feel like there are a lot of people who decide like it's just better not to ever say anything about technology publicly again if I'm going to go work at Apple because it's just easier. And I get that. But at the same time, I feel like there's a whole lot of that ground that Apple could give and still not suffer any reputation, not have it be, something that looks bad for them in a particular way. Let people go on podcasts or be interviewed in publications and that kind of stuff and talk about technology in broad terms without saying, well, when Apple makes the car, blah, 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 blah. No, but being able to say, technology is at a place now that in this moment where these are the sorts of things that could happen that doesn't have anything to do with their job. And I think part of that is, Apple has brought it on themselves by becoming a multi-trillion-dollar company. And, there's an entire cottage industry built out of clickbait headlines that all say Apple right in the name. Because if you say Microsoft in the name, nobody cares. If you say Google or Facebook or Sony, who makes PlayStations or anything else, if you put another company in the name, it's not a news story anymore. And I feel like that's part of what's going on with this is that, people who do this decide they have to trade. I'm going to have to just never get to, hang out with my friends on MacVoices and have a cocktail and chat because that's not a thing that can happen anymore. And I think that's part of it is just having to it's easier to not say anything. You know what I mean?
That wraps up part 2 of this MacVoices live discussion, where the panel members are giving Apple ideas of what they think they should do. And boy, it is all over the map. So tune in for part 3 because it is just as interesting as the first 2 parts. And again, sometimes the ideas are very high level, sometimes they are very personal, and they always spark debate among the panelists. So until the next time, this is MacVoices. I'm Chuck Joyner. Thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you MacVoices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.